week's off to a great start, and we're glad you're starting it with CNN 10. I'm Carl Azuz. Today, Monday, September 17th, is exactly 50 days away from the 2018 U.S. midterm elections. Americans aren't choosing a president this year. These elections are called midterms because they happen in the middle of a president's four-year term. What voters are choosing are their representatives in Congress, as well as candidates for state and local offices. Currently, members from President Donald Trump's political party, the Republican Party, control both the House of Representatives and the Senate. In the House, there are 435 voting members. Republicans hold 236 seats. Democrats hold 193, and there are 6 vacancies that haven't been filled yet. Since representatives are elected every 2 years, that includes the midterms, and every one of these seats is up for election this year. In the Senate, there are 100 members. Republicans hold 51 seats, Democrats hold 47 seats, and independents, who usually vote with the Democrats, hold 2 seats. Senators are elected every 6 years, so about a third of these seats, 35, are up for election this year. In general, lawmakers who are in the same party as the president tend to lose seats in the midterm elections, regardless of who the president is. And the reason why the House and Senate get so much attention is because their makeup can affect the president's ability to get legislative goals accomplished. So with the battle lines drawn, the big questions in this year's midterms are, will Republicans hold on to their control in both the House and Senate, or will Democrats take control of one or both chambers? We'll find out on November 6th, with Americans watching as organizations like CNN project results from each state. Here's what that means.
We've got a really major projection to make right now.
On election night, you're going to find out the winners and losers by going here, 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 and here. But this is where it all begins. When you walk out of the voting booth on Tuesday, you might be approached by somebody with a clipboard, a couple of sheets of paper asking you some questions. This is called the exit poll. Once that data is collected all across the country, it comes back to here, to our exit poll team. 5 people dedicated to taking all this data from across the country, crunching it, looking at it, and trying to figure out what makes the most sense to explain to you how the election night is unfolding. Okay, so we've talked about exit polls, and now we're over here at the decision desk. This is where a dozen members from across the country, these are journalists, and these are statisticians, professional mathematicians, who sit here and they're working on 10 different models at any given time to try to figure out how to call a race. You can look at the exit poll data and call a race just off of that. The raw vote is your vote. That's the vote that we start to see that comes in from the individual states, the individual counties. Third way we can do it is we can just call a race on the raw vote. We don't even use the exit polls because at some time throughout the night, the raw vote becomes more dominant and more important. And then ultimately, we may never call a race because it has become so close. You're talking about potentially recounts, and look at how many races are going to be so competitive this year. Who knows what's going to happen?
Officials don't know yet what kind of impact Hurricane Florence had on the U.S. Southeast. The storm blew ashore Friday near Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. It had weakened to Category 1 status by then, but the flooding it brought continues to get worse in the region. Hundreds have been trapped in rising waters. The coastal city of Wilmington, North Carolina, has been mostly cut off. There's too much flood water for miles around it for people to get back in, at least without a boat. Authorities blame Hurricane Florence for at least 15 deaths in North Carolina and South Carolina. Typhoon Mangkhut is another deadly storm we've been following. It killed at least 54 people in the Philippines on Saturday as it churned across the Pacific. And so far, 2 deaths have been recorded in southern China following Mangkhut's landfall there on Sunday afternoon. Landslides, tremendous amounts of rain, and flooding are also the effects of this storm.
Hidden dangers can lurk in floodwater. Alligators, snakes, even floating fire ants could be nearby. Water in a flooded basement can carry an electrical current. Downed power lines submerged in floodwater can also shock. If you have any open cuts or sores, viruses and bacteria such as tetanus may infect them. Under floodwater, nail nails and fragments of metal and glass may go unseen, leading to possible injuries and infections. Floodwater can cause structural damage. Submerged stairs and floors may be unsafe. Oil, gasoline, and pesticides and other toxic agents can contaminate floodwater. Some chemicals in floodwater can cause headaches, skin rashes, and other signs of chemical poisoning. Fungi can grow from moisture in standing floodwater. They can often be seen and smelled. Breathing in mold can trigger allergies and sometimes cause a major infection.
10-second trivia. Which of these events took place on September 17, 1787? The Whiskey Rebellion, U.S. gained independence, the Constitution was signed, or the Constitution was ratified? The U.S. Constitution was signed on September 17th, a date now known as Constitution Day. It's Constitution Day. On this date in 1787, 39 delegates to the Constitutional Convention signed the document that today is the oldest written constitution still in use by any government. We're finding out how much you know about the U.S. Constitution, starting with some fun true or false questions. All right, number one, the word democracy appears in Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. Answer, false. The word democracy doesn't actually appear anywhere in the document. Next, Benjamin Franklin was the oldest person to sign the Constitution. This is true. He was 81 and in declining health, so he needed someone to help him sign it. And it's said that as he did, tears were streaming down his face. 3, some delegates to the convention refused to sign the Constitution. Answer, true. Of the 6 delegates who did not sign, 3 of them, Edmund Randolph and George Mason of Virginia and Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts, refused to do so, partly because the Constitution didn't have a Bill of Rights. Those amendments guaranteeing individual liberties were proposed 2 years later. Moving on, 2 future U.S. presidents signed the Constitution. One was George Washington. Who was the other? We'll give you some options on this one. Was it John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, or James Monroe? The answer, C, James Madison. Madison's also called the father of the Constitution because he contributed so much to it. Since the ratification of the Bill of Rights in 1791, how many additional amendments have been added to the Constitution? Is the answer 7, 10, 12, or 17? If you said D, 17, you got it. That last amendment, the 27th, says that a pay raise for members of Congress cannot take effect until after an election. Now, which branch of the U.S. government is mentioned first in the Constitution? Is it the legislative, judicial, or executive? Answer A. The legislative branch's powers are laid out in Article 1 of the Constitution. This is the branch that includes the House of Representatives and the Senate, and it's charged with making the laws that govern the country. Finally, where can you find the original copy of the Constitution? Is it in Fort Knox, Kentucky, the Library of Congress, the Smithsonian Institution, or the National Archives? Answer D. The National Archives building in Washington, D.C. To preserve the quality of the document, it is kept at 67 degrees Fahrenheit and 40% humidity. And you can say that fascinating fact constitutes our Constitution Day quiz. On land, Jamaican sprinter Usain Bolt is pretty fast.
Ready, step, go!
But does that speed under the weight of gravity hold up when the weight of gravity is lifted? The question was answered last Wednesday when Bolt took on a European astronaut and a French designer who were with him aboard a zero-gravity plane. The there and back race started slowly at first. Well, it ended slowly too, but just like on terra firma, Bolt was first across the finish line. Seems the event lacked as much gravitas as it did gravity, but at least there was little friction between the competitors. When the race was afoot, it showed how hard it is to keep pace with a record-holding runner. He's still a shoo-in to create space between himself and others, even when his head and the rest of him is in the clouds. I'm Carl Azuz, and CNN 10 is all of Bolt the Puns.